And we are off. We're in business. We're live. It's Betting You, Odd Shopper. Time to talk about college football. Week 12, all the spreads. The college football playoffs, what you guys need to know, who we're betting. We got you ready to rock. The big marquee games are on the docket. Rasa and Matt Gajewski, you guys know the drill by now, but if you're just brand new to the channel, welcome aboard. This is Betting You. Hope you stick around. Subscribe. Takes only a second. Sir, we're beyond the thick of it now. The season's winding down. Teams have punched their tickets to bowls. The playoff picture is formulating. I'm going to ask you a bunch of stuff about the playoffs. Just generally, though, how are we doing as Week 12 approaches?
Doing all right, I guess. Sides and totals are not great. Everything else is fine, so it kind of makes this show a little weird. But yeah, I can't complain. Football's here again.
I'm going to complain. I'm going to complain about what I already complained about, which is Jimmy Horn. That every show I do, I'm going to mention this until I die, which could be momentarily.
Hopefully the viewers like this one. This is probably the weirdest beat of all time, in my opinion.
So you have correctly identified, the Colorado wide receivers, Jimmy Horn, the books, they're just not pricing him up properly. There was closing line value on it. Checked out. I go to the game. He has no catches. And I'm like, I wonder if he's hurt or not playing. Maybe he didn't play. But then I saw he had a kickoff return. And I'm like, okay, well, clearly. Then I dig in. First of all, to set the stage, this is a question. Why is Texas Tech throwing tortillas? That's just like their thing?
As far as I know, I've never been there, never been to Lubbock.
Yeah, I'm not going to
This is not the first time they've thrown tortillas. I don't know if they do this every game or not.
It should be the last. So they threw a bunch of tortillas, and Jimmy Horn somehow slipped on one and sprained an ankle. That's a new low in a series of lows for me. I don't think I've ever had one that bad.
Yeah, it was 5 snaps into the game. I went back and looked after that. I had this too.
Wow.
Yeah, it was my favorite prop of the entire day.
Yeah, of course. Of course it was. That's what the hell's been going on here. But let's move on from that, and let's talk a little about – we can get into the first game, honestly, because it's a conversation about the playoffs as we do it. And I'm talking about Tennessee and Georgia. These are huge marquee matchups. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it seems to be the case. Is it an elimination game for Georgia?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't know what they're going to do with all of these teams that have 3 losses, especially in the SEC.
I think they're getting some. I think a 3-loss team's going to get in, personally.
I wouldn't be surprised. Who's the highest ranked 3-loss team right now? LSU? I don't agree with that, but
they're not getting in. But if Georgia loses, I think they could get in.
I agree with you. I think if it ended right now, it's still the same in the Big Ten. I think Indiana's almost a surefire lock at this point. And even with the loss to Ohio State, as long as it's not a bloodbath.
Yeah.
But yeah, Indiana's going to have 1 loss. I don't see any way they're out. Texas A&M, Texas, and Tennessee are the highest rated SEC teams. I don't think that holds. Tennessee obviously has the enormous game this weekend against Georgia, who continues to look poor. We'll talk about it in a second. Texas A&M, they played Texas yet, but New Mexico State, Auburn, close loss to Notre Dame. If they could ever decide on a QB, they're actually a team that's live to make this thing. I bet them preseason at pretty long odds, so kind of still holding out some hope there that they can figure it out. And Texas, what are we doing with this schedule? I guess they do play A&M at the end of the year. That could decide a lot depending on how things shake out. But Texas has had the easiest run out of all time. But anyway, that gets us to 7 teams. And then I don't think really anything else has changed. Notre Dame, Boise, probably the 2 most likely teams. Washington State's hanging around. But then it comes down to 2 ACC or 2 Big 12. I think you probably see one of those conferences get 2 in. I don't know which one anymore because all their teams keep losing except for BYU. So who knows?
Don't even get me started on that game. How BYU won that game is an actual miracle.
Just give us SMU.
Yes, please.
And my preference would be like SMU, put Miami in just for like a fun game because they can't play any defense. I don't think Miami's that deserving anymore. And then give me Colorado. I don't think that's the most likely, but I do not want to see BYU in the playoff. This is a preference thing, not a prediction.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. with this game, it's, for Georgia, obviously they were just handled in Oxford. Now they come home here and they're flirting with double-digit favorites against Tennessee. Tennessee's had some marquee wins. The ones that come to mind, obviously, are in Knoxville. Do you think that they have a shot here?
I do think they have a shot. It's a tricky game to handicap. Tennessee has played an easy schedule, even by SEC standards. They have the marquee win against Bama, but it's not been pretty otherwise. Oklahoma is a corpse. They played no one in non-con. They lost to Arkansas. Florida OT beat Kentucky by 10, and then Mississippi State. Outside of maybe Texas, who seemingly faces a backup quarterback every single week, this might be the easiest schedule in the SEC. So they're really hard to parse. Even going back to preseason, I know you and I both had questions with their secondary that's held up fairly well for the most part. They're actually 32nd in coverage, and they're getting pretty good play out of some like unexpected players. They're starting a freshman, Boo Carter, at safety, who's been awesome for them. But I still don't trust Iamaleava. I don't trust the offensive line. They're allowing a lot of pressure, which has not been great for Iamaleava. 68th in pass blocking, 124th in run blocking. They keep benching players in the offensive line. Last week, John Campbell and Andre Karich both came out of the game, and that was not injury related. This is a routine thing for them. Georgia has been a little better on defense since they got healthier, but I mean, this is still a concerning unit, especially on the back end. They are 27th overall. Their best skill is run defense, which I guess is a good setup against Tennessee because Iamaleava has really struggled throwing the ball at times this year. But man, this defense has been uncharacteristically leaky. They just allowed 9 yards per attempt to Jackson Dart, 7.8 yards per attempt to Lagway before injury. The only real feather in their cap has been against Quinn Ewers, who's not having a good season in his own right. So this is really tough to parse. You have to go through the Tennessee strength of schedule, which is weak. Both quarterbacks have been really struggling. Beck has just he's had an unbelievable run out recently. His 9 interceptions in the last 4 games. Just an absolute disaster season for them. He's up to 17 turnover-worthy plays. He's run a little bad in this time on the field. Like last week against Ole Miss, he had the 1 pick. I guess it could have been worse. Maybe I shouldn't say he ran bad, but he hasn't been playing well is the bottom line. And getting up to 17 turnover-worthy plays, he's approaching like the tops of the country in that regard. His O-line isn't doing him that many favors. I mean, now Micah Morris has been limited. Tate Ratledge is still limited. Trevor Etienne's been limited. On defense, they did get back Smail Mundin and Jordan Hall. Both of them barely played, so they're still not at full strength, but I'm not sure it matters when they are. I would like to play Tennessee. I'm not going to play them away from home at this number. That's the side I lean to right now. It's also probably going to be a defensive game. Tennessee at least has been good there so far against their level of competition. You know, like they have questions, but they've answered the call so far. Georgia, I don't know if they need to be that good against Iamaleava. And plus, you stop Samson, you kind of stop Tennessee.
Yeah, I worry a little bit about Tennessee in this spot. You mentioned they've benefited from a good schedule. This is a tough scene off the Georgia loss. I think I may flirt with the Georgia side, but I haven't bet anything on it yet. Now we go to the ACC. Shocking, Pittsburgh turns out not as good as I don't even know what to make of them. This is the team I thought we were going to see the whole year. Them and Clemson. Clemson is, I guess, hanging on to some life in the ACC. They probably need a little help. They're also flirting. They're a little more. They're actually a double-digit favorite at most books at this point. It's gone to flat 10. What do you make of them? I guess they bounced back last week. Credit to them, but I'm still not sure what to make of Clemson altogether.
I think they probably just need losses in the Big 12 because all the better brands are in the ACC. And SMU's kind of taking care of business. I think the playoff committee would love to get one of Clemson or Miami in at the expense of a Big 12 team. Definitely. And luckily, most Big 12 teams are continuing to lose except BYU. A worst case scenario would be like a BYU, I don't know, let's just throw in Kansas State in the championship and BYU loses. Then what do you do? Anyway, this is a Clemson conversation. Yeah, I mean, not to continue to complain, we've bet against Pitt multiple times this year. They've had these miraculous comeback wins, and a lot of it just on the back of luck. So far, Eli Holstein has 20 turnover-worthy plays. Only 6 of them have been converted to interceptions. I mean, this is the anti-Peyton Thorne. It's just the most ridiculous stat I think you could see. He's truly been one of the worst quarterbacks in the country at taking care of the ball and just had defender after defender drop passes. It's finally come to bite them, losing the last 2 games, getting absolutely dismantled by SMU to generational wealth spot. I know you and I were both on them. I don't think they're going to be able to stop Clemson. The biggest hesitation I have is all these Clemson injuries. They lost Kobe McLeod for the year at linebacker, Shelton Lewis at safety, Peter Woods at defensive tackle, DeMonte Capehart at defensive tackle, Trey Williams at defensive tackle. All those guys have been missing time. On offense, Colin Sadler's been out. They lost Tristan Lee, their left tackle, in their last game. I don't know if Pitt's going to have enough firepower even with Clemson being pretty banged up, but that's really the key to the game. Klubnik has had an excellent year. He struggled a little bit in spots where he's really stepping up in competition. Pittsburgh is not that. So it's a Clemson or pass for me.
Clemson or pass for me as well. It's just Pittsburgh, you mentioned some of the optics. They weren't good, starting to catch up to them. Different levels here. I know Clemson's not the same out of Death Valley, and maybe they're not even good there anymore after what Louisville did to them, but still. Clemson or pass, if you can find 9 in a hook and you don't have to lay a ton of juice, that's a pretty appealing spot. Arkansas certainly doesn't factor in to anything nationally, just playing spoiler, but Texas, of course, does. Texas has some wiggle room. I don't think this is a game that you want to drop, obviously, and I don't think that they do. 14-point spread. Arkansas has been a weird team to evaluate. At times they've looked better than I thought, and at times they've looked worse than I thought. What do you make here? Is it just too much Texas?
Dude, don't get me started.
I know.
Basically, every team we talk, I bet Arkansas against UAB.
Yeah, I remember that game.
Yeah. UAB loses by 87 points every week, except against an SEC team.
Yep.
Anyway. Yeah. Very, very shady stuff. I don't know if I'm going to mess around with this spread. It's a little bit rich, in my opinion. It saw some movement when Taylor Green, there was a report that came out that he's healthy and he's going to play. I think anyone with a pulse was already expecting that. So I don't truly understand the line movement. It's kind of getting close to the point where I'm somewhat interested in backing Texas, who's completely healthy right now. The only absence of note is Jonte Cook, and he just left the team. On Arkansas, Jaquindon Jackson's going to be questionable. I think he does return here, but still haven't had Jalen Braxton. They are healthier, so maybe you could play they had a ton of injuries earlier this year. Maybe you could play the game that their efficiency metrics are a little bit worse on paper because of these injuries. Now at full strength, they should be better. But how much better do they need to be to actually compete with Texas? Texas is number 1 in total defense in the country right now. They're number 17 in offense. Their biggest weakness is their quarterback, Quinn Ewers. He's having a bad year. 11 turnover-worthy plays, 6 interceptions. He only has 7 big-time throws. He's basically like the fanciest game manager in the entire country. But luckily, he can kind of get away with that. This team has an awesome offensive line. This is one of the best units in the country. Their receivers are amazing, especially now that Bond is back. Arkansas is outside the top 100 in defense, even with some guys returning. I don't think you stop Texas. Texas just doesn't have to do anything. Quinn Ewers, like last year, can just get the ball into his playmakers' hands and let him work. They rarely need to ask him to do anything. Taylor Green needs to be a superhero. Just mentioned he is a little banged up. The O-line is significantly worse, 83rd in pass blocking, 62nd in run blocking. I guess the only hole you could poke is that Texas somehow keeps facing backup quarterbacks. They just faced Aiden Warner, a walk-on third string for Florida. Pavia, they did a good job against. Beck, they did a good job against. But then Hawkins, Michael Van Buren, General Booty, Owen McCown, Davis Warren, Braden Fowler, Nicolosi. It's one of the worst quarterback schedules in the entire country. It's nice that they did handle business against Beck and Pavia. Those are 2 data points that I am comfortable with if you want to take a Texas side. But I'm definitely not back in Arkansas at any point this year.
No. Again, so far we've done 3 games, and they're all flirting with key numbers. There's a 13.5 out there. I think you want to fish for that if you're going for Texas. They probably just ultimately wear them down. I don't have much to really report. I'm not betting Arkansas. These are all
not really a look ahead. Their last game is an important game.
Yeah, and it's at the end of the year. It's sprint to the finish. I don't really worry about that either. BYU. It's incredible how, and I'm with them. The books don't show BYU much love. All these games, they're barely favorite over teams that I think people would be shocked about. And Utah had them. I'm a little biased. I was really rooting for Utah, and I thought Utah won the game straight up. They just won the game, but they didn't on the what really counts. And now BYU gets Kansas, who you mentioned you were all over. Kansas is starting to play a little better, and they have some talent. Do you think this is where BYU finally gets knocked off?
I wouldn't be surprised. They're at home, so that's
That
always going to
helps.
benefit them. Yeah. Kansas, tough road trip for them. But I love this Kansas team heading into the year. The main issue they had is Jalen Daniels was absolutely killing them early in the year with his turnover-worthy plays. He's 15 of them on the year. Those are mostly front-loaded. He's done a much better job recently. And a lot of them have been converted, 9 of them into interceptions, and it's been an absolute disaster. This team has plenty of games with positive post-game win expectancies that actually turned out as losses. 2 of them that stand out are Illinois. I mean, they had 3 of them in a row to start the year, basically. Illinois, UNLV, West Virginia. Their lowest post-game win expectancy in that 3-game losing streak was 58%. Now, things got a little bit greasy after that. They lost to TCU. They lost to Arizona State. But they have turned it on recently. I mean, this team just beat Iowa State, a pretty good win. The biggest concern with them is still defensively. They did allow 10.4 yards per attempt to Rocco Becht. BYU has good receivers. Retzlaff has had an okay season, 12 big-time throws, 12 turnover-worthy plays, but he can also play kind of like a game managerial role because Chase Roberts and Darius Lassiter are excellent receivers. And they now have a run game with LJ Martin back, good offensive lines. So I do have concerns about this Kansas defense stacking up against the offense. But on the other side, Jalen Daniels playing extremely well. He's mobile, and he's taking care of the ball a little bit better recently. BYU's defense, they're definitely not a unit that I fear. They've been better than I thought this year, but you have to basically defend 3 receivers with Arnold, Grimm, and Skinner. Devin Neal is awesome. They got back Highshaw in their last game. So I think that you still see Kansas move the ball. I'd love to take this team. I don't know if I want to right now. Just might wait and see where this goes throughout the week with Kansas having to take this road trip. We know the market loves those. So I don't really see any incentive to hit this right away. It doesn't look like it's going to move.
Yeah, I think if anything, you might find 3 and a hook if you wait. So I'm with you. I'm not going to bet BYU. I've been looking for spots to short them. I don't know if this is it, to be honest. I think if and when they get knocked off, I'm not sure it's going to be at home. I really respect that from them. But Kansas is that type of team, and they're starting to find it late in the season here. It's the Big 12. You mentioned at the top of the show. Man. The Big 12 is a complete mess. It's a mess. Iowa State's cooked. Colorado. It really might just be Colorado in the end, them and BYU.
They're live, man.
Very live. Very live.
Can we do a quick aside on the Big 12?
Please.
The teams that are live in this conference are, I guess, most live. BYU has to be the favorite right now. They play Kansas this week, Arizona State, and Houston. It's a pretty easy run out. They're probably
Arizona State's going to beat them. I can feel it.
I wouldn't be surprised, but they're probably in the title game, even if they drop one.
Yes.
Because they've played so well recently. But that's a huge swing game. From there, Colorado plays Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. They control their own destiny. Arizona State probably needs a little help, but they have a bunch of big games. Kansas State, BYU. Iowa State still has a path. Kansas State still has a path. Believe it or not, West Virginia needs help, of course, but they still have a path. They only have 2 conference losses. Baylor, UCF, and Texas Tech are their remaining schedule. This conference is going to be pure fireworks the rest of the way. It's basically a race to play BYU unless there's some crazy thing that happens in their last 3 games. But even, like Houston's no walkover at this point. They've been much better since they switched to Zion Chris. The next 3 weeks are going to be awesome for this conference.
It's going to be fascinating again, there's no way to tell. I just wonder if a loss for BYU even matters at this point. Honestly, because it feels somewhat that if BYU doesn't win the Big 12, even if they only had 1 loss, it wouldn't matter and they'd get knocked out. But we'll see.
Books definitely hate them.
I mean, I'm no fan of them either. I mean, you know what? Credit to them. They've won a bunch of fluky games, and they are obviously a much better team than I expected. But
yeah, both things can be true.
Yeah, of course. Both things are true. I'm positive. Like I've watched BYU; they're not that good, but they're winning the games. They're
Yeah. I
winning the
thought they
game.
were the worst team in this conference in the preseason, which was obviously wrong.
That's
But
what I mean. So did I. That clearly is wrong, but they're also not like the fourth best team in the country. They would be dogs on a neutral field to like Florida.
oh, they would be like 10-point dogs. I mean, this team has had an incredible run out. They played like SMU when Preston Stone was still playing. Svoboda, who's been benched. They did do a good job against Avery Johnson. That game was the wild turnover game. They almost lost to Baylor. Then they played their last 4 quarterbacks they faced have been Noah Fafita, Alan Bowman, Ja'Cory Brown, and Brandon Rose. I mean, we talk about good runouts. Some teams just get good runouts, and then
that's the name of the game. You know what? But we're gonna be looking. I may drop some playoff stuff, and I do want to mention right off the bat, of course, if you guys have been watching this show and you say, you know what, I love this, but there are games that you didn't get to on either episode, or I have questions or props, this or that, come into the marketplace. Come check out what we've got going on at Tails. It's fantastic. We've got our packages, we've got our products, we've got everything there for you. And the best thing that we've got going on right now, I'm going to show it to you momentarily. If you have not seen this, we are offering the ability not just to get inside and get to the Discords, but also claim the bonuses from the sites for free. So what do I mean by this? If you go to this page, and it's in the description of this video, you're going to land here. It says sign up with our partners to get expert picks for free. Any of these offers, look at this: BetMGM, Bet365, Caesars, Sleeper, Underdog, DraftKings, FanDuel, Pick 6, Better, Vivid. Pick one, pick two. It doesn't matter. For each one you pick, you will get a month of any Tails marketplace package that you want, and they stack. What does that mean? Say you say, okay, I want Bet365, and I also have been thinking about getting on Caesars. That's 2 months. You could do 2 months of one person. You could do 1 month of 2 different people. It is that simple. So not only are you getting the amazing value from the books, you're getting the amazing value from the Tails marketplace, which again, it's growing really quickly, but it's so much fun. It's an awesome community in there. You see all these different people offering totally different packages. We'll see you in there. You're getting the best of both worlds. Now, where are we? Yes. You know what? Credit to Navy. I thought that Navy might not be able to even keep it afloat, but they're doing a good job. Notre Dame is Notre Dame. This is a good game. This is a low key. If you have time, make some room in the schedule and watch this game, because I'm certainly going to try to catch it. Tulane, I think, is the class of that conference. What do you make of them here? Do you think Navy can knock them off?
Yeah, I included this so high because it's the game of the year in this conference. I think
it deserves to be high.
And people will probably try to talk about Army, the new addition to this conference this offseason, but they haven't played anybody. These are the 2 highest teams in power ratings in this entire conference. It's a weaker conference now that they've been pillaged. But this is an interesting game overall. I guess injury-wise first, both teams are pretty healthy. Sam Howard at linebacker did miss Tulane's last game. Navy has had incredible health the entire year. But right away, I think this is a game that could play towards the under with, the triple option aspects. Tulane, believe it or not, is slower than Navy. Navy's 131st in pace. Tulane is 132nd. Both of these teams play good defense. Navy's 27th. Tulane is 20th. You can find blips on the radar for both teams, but largely it's when they've stepped up in competition. Like Navy got slaughtered by Notre Dame. That's Notre Dame. They've taken care of business really at every other point this season. The only other blip on the radar, I think, is Memphis. They allowed 44 points, but that's Memphis. Memphis is a shootout team, and they're by far the second best offense this team has faced. Tulane has done a pretty good job across the board. I think allowing 34 points to both Kansas State and Oklahoma is pretty strong. They're just outmatched against these P4 teams. And really, most of the other steps of the way here, they've taken care of business. The only other time where they were severely, not even severely, they won this game, but they allowed 37 points to North Texas, who has one of the better offenses in this conference. So I do think the defense can stand up tall for both of these teams. Defending the triple for Tulane is going to be key. They are 56 in run defense. They're a little bit better in coverage. That's at least worth noting. But Navy's defense is strong across the board. Their weakest unit's their pass rush, but they're awesome in run defense, awesome in coverage. I think an under here is playable.
Any number in mind right now? I see 54.5 out there. Are you good with that?
Yeah, I didn't take it thinking that this might come up. I had it flagged towards the under at 53, but just thought it might go the other way, so didn't take it. But I mean, I'm just gonna wait. Maybe you even get like a 55. It's been coming up.
Yeah, it has. So that's again, keep an eye on that one. Flag it and get your number. Jump on in. We're going right back to the Big 12, Arizona State and Kansas State. Again, I think that these are the type of teams that one of them is going to, I don't want to say emerge. And this is a tough spot in Manhattan. I like what Arizona State's doing. This is a just sub 10-point spread, 8.5, 9 points. What do you think Arizona State can really do? Or is this just too much Kansas State, the running backs, Johnson, and they get it done at home?
I don't think Kansas State is that good. I think they've been kind of living close to the sun and getting away with a lot of stuff. Avery Johnson is 11 turnover-worthy plays, only 9 big-time throws. Their offensive line is average. They've moved a lot of players around in that area, and they don't play any defense. So I don't think this is a unit that's like really built to sustain in this conference. And we've seen them drop games because of their woes. They just lost to Houston in their most recent game. Now that they do go home here, which I guess is positive. But this Arizona State team is far healthier than they were at the beginning of the year. So they're another team similar to like an Arkansas who potentially has holes in their power rating metrics, especially on defense. They come in 87th. They played much better there recently, and it's largely just because they had 5 starters out to begin the year. They have allowed some production, but it's to some of the better offenses. Like UCF has an amazing power run game, scored 31 points on them. But otherwise, they did a pretty decent job against Oklahoma State, Cincinnati. Utah is a corpse. It is what it is. And then you get back into the stretch of games where they were really injured. The biggest thing here is watching the status of Scatabo, I think, their star running back. Not sure if he's going to play. He's the biggest thing to monitor in this game because Kansas State is fully healthy. They're going to just have the better clean bill of health this year. But I'm interested in Arizona State. I'll wait for the Scatabo status. If he plays, I do like this.
If he doesn't and it hits 10, do you still like it?
Probably not.
Okay, that's fair.
Maybe, though. I don't know. I'd have to think on that more.
Oh, look who made the appearance in the show. My team, the team, SMU, quietly just doing their thing. They get sleepy Boston College coming into, I think they're in Dallas, wherever the hell they are down there. 16.5, 17 points. Jennings has been awesome. No slip up here, right?
I don't think so. Jennings, awesome player. Wish he would have started the whole year. Maybe would have him as like a dark horse Heisman candidate. But yeah, Boston College is an absolute corpse right now. It's just the spread is so high at 17, 16.5. I'm not sure I really want to take it. They benched Castellanos in their last game for Grayson James. I guess Grayson James looked
great.
He was an FIU great. So great that he lost a starting job to a freshman last year.
Yeah.
And he did start a game previously this year against Western Kentucky, and they nearly lost. So he has like one half of football looking decent in relief of Castellanos. I don't know, man. They have a ton of injuries. Jaden Skeet at wide receiver, Turbo Richards at running back. Most of their main injuries are on defense. Amari Jackson in the corner, Jalen Cheek at safety, Cole Batson at safety, Cam Arnold at linebacker. They've been giving up a lot of points. Now you have SMU coming to town. I mean, this could just be an absolute bloodbath for this game. SMU needs to win these contests. They actually have legitimate postseason aspirations right now. The only real injuries with SMU, RJ Maryland, I think, is probably the biggest one. They have a couple of receivers that are banged up, but I don't think that matters. They use like 6 of them anyway. So they should be the healthier team. Do you like this even at the like near 17? It's a little dicey for me at that number.
I just worry about like what do you expect the pace to be in this game? I'm a little freaked out that you're just gonna have to run like crazy efficient.
Boston College plays super slow. They're 97th in pace. SMU plays fast. They're 27th. Yeah. So SMU could always get there on their own.
No, they can. It's 16.5. Honestly, Boston College is awful though. Like even with the pace, I know I'm talking kind of at both sides here. I worry about that, but Boston College, how the hell did they beat Syracuse? All these middling teams in the ACC are just impossible. Like the NC States of the world. I have no idea how good they are. I'll tell you this much. It's SMU or pass. That's pretty clear to me. I have no interest in Boston College. At 17 and 17 and a half, it's probably pass. At 16 and a half, I think you can seriously entertain an SMU position.
I'm somewhat interested in under Boston College's team total. It's going to be
Or
above
that.
17. If you wait, maybe it'll get like, I don't know where the total is going to go. Maybe it'll get close to like 20, or you could find a juice 20. It's going to be in kind of that no man's land between 17 and 21, most likely at most books. But I'm interested in that. I wouldn't be surprised if they score under 21 points.
Yeah, I agree with that. SMU's defense is not bad.
They're awesome. They're sneaky, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're put in insanely bad positions half the time by their offense.
Well, they are 89th in special teams.
Yeah, they do some really just dumb stuff out there. But SMU, like, I mean, you know how I feel about them. All right, let's go. Any chance? I mean, it's not that they haven't been tested, because they've been tested against some marquee teams. Any chance it really gets chaotic and they can absorb it? But you think Oregon can get into trouble here?
No, I don't think Oregon's going to get into trouble.
No?
I guess like
jumping around, causing a ruckus.
Do you think that's possible?
No, not really.
I think Wisconsin's played worse of late.
So yeah, the problem with Wisconsin is I don't, and you would know more than me. I don't know if it's personnel issues. I thought that Wisconsin was in a couple really good spots. They got it together, and now I realize that Rutgers and Northwestern are just terrible. Because
and Purdue, they had the 3-game.
Yeah, Purdue is like, but they went on the road and they crushed Rutgers. They crushed Northwestern. They come home to take on Penn State in a game that I thought they could have won, and it didn't work. And then they got destroyed by Iowa, who lost to UCLA. I'm a little skeeved out here that Oregon seems to just have too much.
I think Oregon's going to have too much in most contests.
Yeah, that's very true.
They did lose their guard, Marcus Harper. I don't know when he's going to be back. Tez Johnson, don't think we see him for at least a couple weeks. I think Tez probably is like on the postseason path to playing again. But I don't really know if that matters. There's so many good recruits on this team. A receiver, the offensive line has been playing multiple players. I mean, I just think is way too much firepower. You know, like you go from Tez, who is really hard to replace, but you just get, boom, 4 or 5-star Justice Lowe comes in. Trayshawn Holden, an Alabama transfer. Gary Bryant made his first appearance. He barely played, but maybe they're just getting him warmed up. It's just so much firepower on this team. They're recruiting like the best team in the country, like a top 3 unit every single season under Lanning. It's just, I don't know. Wisconsin's definitely not doing that. Braden Locke has regressed. He's now up to 15 turnover-worthy plays, only 6 big-time throws. Exactly half of those have been converted into interceptions. Can't run. The best thing this unit does on offense is just run the ball down your throat. They're 5th in pass blocking, 47th in run blocking, but it's like almost even worse than like an Iowa, like a poor man's Iowa. There's not really a threat for Wisconsin through the air. And when they do throw, like they actually have some talented receivers. Bryson Green's been out, but I think Will Pauling's okay when he doesn't drop the ball. Vinny Anthony's been a great field stretcher, but Locke has been so erratic. I don't know. I still have concerns. And plus, even with Wisconsin's good offensive line, you're facing one of the best pass rushers in the country that got back Birch. Yoel Galilei is awesome on this unit. Locke is going to be under pressure. I guess like biggest concern, yeah, you got to go on the road. You got to go to Camp Randall. I don't know. Camp Randall doesn't scare me at all.
This is the type of spot I would love to target. I just don't know personnel-wise if it matches up. If it goes to 14.5, and I've seen a couple, maybe.
I don't think I'm going to take it either way, honestly.
Yeah,
maybe something
I hear
live.
Yeah, maybe something live. That's fair.
Wisconsin has looked so bad against most teams this year.
In Oregon, I mean, not that they've played any like really tough tests on the road, but they've just decimated everybody. So
yeah. They were lucky. Ohio State had to come to them.
Yeah, Ohio State and Boise both were there. I mean, Oregon literally they played Michigan on the road.
Big House is tough to play, but not when you're playing 10 on 11.
Yeah, that's not it. LSU is done. Florida was done when the schedule came out. 4.5 point spread. I guess it starts with who's playing quarterback for Florida, because if it's not Lagway, then I mean I don't know. I don't understand. This other guy, no offense, but he can't play at all.
No, I think he went to. I didn't actually look into this. I think he went to Yale and he was a walk on.
He did go to Yale. I heard that on the broadcast last week.
He must be a smart guy then, but
yeah,
that'll only bring you so far.
Smart enough to get him. He almost got himself killed last week. They had no chance in that game. But now they're back at home at least. But man, oof.
They're just so hurt, and it's not just the quarterbacks. Graham Mertz obviously out for the year. Lagway dealing with the hamstring. I think he plays. But Montrell Johnson's been hurt at running back. Khalil Jackson's been out for the year. They lost Eugene Wilson, their best receiver. He's out. Elijah Badger didn't play, so they were down to some really young guys. Damian George at guard missed the game. They're really banged up in the secondary, and they just got outmatched in that game. I think this comes down to, do you think Lagway can keep them in this? And I think it actually might be a closer game than people think. Florida is taking some money, probably on the news that Lagway's practicing. But Florida, I think, is going to be outmatched against like the Texases of the world. Maybe, like the Oregons, the Ohio States, if those matchups were to ever occur. We're talking hypotheticals here. But LSU, I think, is closer to Florida than they are to the top tier of the SEC. Florida's a sneaky team when they're healthy. So maybe this just comes down to, a couple guys that could return: George, Badger, Johnson, some of the defenders. If they play, I would be very interested in Florida. I just don't know if you can guarantee it. I don't think Lagway is quite enough.
That's step one. We may have to keep an eye on this as we get closer to Saturday, because I have interest in Florida as well. I felt like it's hard. You never want to do this, but I'm going to do it. It's very hard to quantify, motivation. Where's the team at? LSU's season just ended in horrible fashion at home at night. They got Milroe destroyed them. And now you got to go down to Gainesville against a team with Florida who's playing hard. They just don't have the horses right now. If you get some reinforcements and you're getting 4.5, I would take the Gators in this spot.
This Florida team still seems bought in.
Yeah, they're playing really hard. I'm not a huge fan of their coach, but I will say he's getting, I don't know how you can look at their season and say that he's not getting close to the ceiling of what they could have got out of this team.
I agree with you. It's so hard to evaluate Napier. He's been basically playing with an ankle weight since he took the job with Florida. At first, Florida not having their NIL together, losing players. Then after a couple seasons of them getting just run out of the SEC because of talent acquisition stuff, finally getting it together, getting players like Lagway. But now it's almost like you had 2 throwaway years or something with Napier, and now he finally has his players, but they're all freshmen and super young. I don't know. They've really impressed. I don't know if Napier has the ceiling to ever win this conference. But yeah, their coaching staff is definitely getting a lot out of a pretty lackluster roster at this point, largely just due to injuries and I guess youth. They're playing a ton of young guys.
Yeah. No, Florida next year is going to be a real interesting team.
Well, their AD probably, I don't know, probably got like the hardest schedule known to man.
Yeah, it's a tough scene. Them and Florida State will be quite a showdown late in the year. They should really.
Florida State just fired all their coaches. I
saw that. Just literally just firing everybody. All right. A couple more, and then we'll take some best bets. And again, if we don't get to anything in this show, we got another episode coming up in just a couple days. It's one of the many reasons you want to get involved, get in Discord, just be part of the Odd Shopper community. If you're not, just press subscribe. Very, very easy. Cincinnati and Iowa State. You mentioned Iowa State's season should have ended, but it didn't technically because the Big 12. Now they're bag of names, 8.5 point spread. Cincinnati killed me last week. Had a pretty good week, but Cincinnati was a frustrating loss. I thought they should have won that game against West Virginia, but it seems like all games against West Virginia are bananas. What do you see here?
That's just every game in the Big 12, man. Every game in the Big 12.
That game was insane.
Yeah, Nico Marchiel had an awesome game. That West Virginia was at 5.8 yards per play, Cincinnati 5.5. It was very close. The big thing is Cincinnati allowed 10.4 yards per pass attempt. That is not something I expected with the backup quarterback. Now, Markiel is not some slouch. He's a 4-star recruit. He's been playing behind a fairly efficient Talon Green, at least through most of Green's career until recently. He's a talented signal caller. They don't change their offense at all when he comes in. I somehow stayed away from that game, which was very lucky because I was on the same side as you. I kind of like Cincinnati in this contest. I've not been a big Iowa State believer. I actually liked them a lot coming into the year because of some preseason returning production metrics, but they've been so hurt throughout this season. I can't believe they got to where they were 7 games undefeated before dropping their last 2. They've been on like third string linebackers all year long, and somehow they've been able to mostly mask it. Recently, that's gotten even worse. J.R. Singleton's loss at defensive tackles really hurt them against the run. They've been gashed in recent weeks. Allowed at least 5 yards per carry to a running back in 3 straight games, whether it was Harvey for UCF, Brooks for Texas Tech, Devin Neal for Kansas, just getting annihilated on the ground. And their offense has concerns too. They returned a ton of production on their offensive line. They had 6 guys that had starting experience. They did lose Dylan Barnett at guard, but I mean, this unit has not taken a large step forward. Their talent development has been poor at this unit. 117th in pass blocking, 89th in run blocking. It's basically, can we get our 2 receivers, and they have 2 studs, Noel and Higgins. Can they win right away, or is Beck going to get killed back there? And a lot of teams recently have been able to kill Beck and completely destroy this offense. Cincinnati does not have a great defensive line, which is a big pause for me in this game. It's basically Dante Corleone, and if you can stop him, you can stop this pass rush. So maybe there's more room for Iowa State to move the ball, but ultimately, I think Cincinnati moves the ball too. This Iowa State defense is putrid, largely because of injuries, and they're going to have to stack up against a very good offensive line. That is Cincinnati's strength by far, best unit on the whole team. Knew that coming into the year. Stopping Kiner in this run game is going to be a huge challenge for them. I am somewhat interested in Cincinnati. I think both teams score in this game.
Can I interest you in an over?
You could. It was similar to last week, some of these greasy Big 12 overs that don't have pace aligned with them. Their defenses are just so bad, it doesn't matter. Pace is bad in this game. Cincinnati 101st, Iowa State 85th. But, I mean, like, so many of these Big 12 offenses are just facing atrocious defenses that explosive plays are coming routinely.
I like the over here. That was the one that kind of stood out. You just mentioned it. Seen it time and time again in this conference. Efficiency and big plays, they can destroy even not the best tempo. I just think we see that here. I think both teams are live to hit mid-20s, 30s, and when this goes over that number, there's 52.5 out there.
That Kansas game last week, the total was 54.5. And I know this is anecdotal. I'm using just one data point, but I mean, like, that game finished 45-36.
It's insane. The numbers get crazy quickly. I've been doing that a lot with Oklahoma State. Baylor's another team. Oklahoma State should just not even be in the conference anymore. But that's another discussion for another time. Okay, let me ask you this. I was talking with a buddy yesterday, and we were going through just chatting about the playoff, and we were going through the teams, and I was like, you know who also has just 2 losses randomly is Missouri. Is Missouri alive?
I think they would need some help because of strength of schedule stuff, but they are alive. I mean, if they're
probably not going to lose.
We'll see if, I guess, Cook comes back at some point.
Yeah, I mean, if they can get through this is going to be
they played 2 of the worst 3 teams in the conference. So their remaining schedule: South Carolina, toughest game; Mississippi State, they should be favored by like 14, and then Arkansas, who I personally think is the 3rd worst team in this conference. It's probably close. That is their 2nd toughest game. But yeah, I mean, this is a really easy schedule the rest of the way. But do you think they've done enough to actually make the playoff if they take care of business?
I mean,
or do you think they need help?
But other than that, no, not really. I mean, I had them last week in a miraculous game that just shows what Oklahoma's dealing with. This is a huge challenge. And you mentioned, I mean, how kind of like Florida in a way, like Missouri is walking wounded.
Brady Cook is a warrior. He's going to come back at some point.
Is it going to be this week, though?
I think there's a decent chance. I mean, he's been trying to play through this. You could talk about efficiency. That's a different question, but they also need him if they want to keep this alive at any point in time because Drew Pine is horrible. If Drew Pine starts this game, I think South Carolina straight up might shut out Missouri. He is horrific. Horrific. And this South Carolina defense has really, really stood up this year. Probably the biggest surprise in the SEC has been the South Carolina defense. They are awesome. They need Brady Cook, man. Brady Cook only has one turnover-worthy play this year. Drew Pine has 4 in like 60 total snaps. I mean, they're just so dead if he plays. But Missouri's defense has actually been a little better than we thought, too. Now, it's been an easy schedule. You could poke holes in this. They're 21st overall. There's some really big issues with this South Carolina offense. Their O-line is terrible. They just lost their left tackle in the last game, and he's a freshman. So I don't know what they're going to do. On defense, a couple guys did miss their game that are worth noting. DeAndre Jules at defensive tackle. He's more of a depth piece. Gilbert Edmonds, same thing at edge. But their safety, DQ Smith, he was injured in their last game too. So maybe that would open things up for Brady Cook, assuming they all missed the game. But, man, I just don't think you can really bet this until you get Brady Cook news. The only other thing to note is Missouri did lose their center, Connor Tolleson, in the last game. He's going to be out for the year, which certainly doesn't help.
I feel like the books have Cook out. Do you not see that?
Think you're right. I don't know. To be honest with you,
12.5 with Cook, I would take that.
I think so, too. South Carolina's been a really hard team for me on the back end this year because
they're deadly at home.
Yeah, and it's these teams you need to make like huge adjustments to quickly, and South Carolina is so volatile because they can't play offense. Their defense has to do everything for them. I'm with you. It's Missouri or pass. I need Brady Cook to play.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm not getting – I was – once was enough last week with Missouri with this other offensive operation. That was –
Drew Pine. You haven't seen enough Drew Pine in Notre Dame and Arizona State.
I've seen too much. Too much. How did Nebraska get in here? What are they doing? I don't even know what this line is. 9.5, 8.5. Them and USC. God, these teams. I mean, what is even going on with these teams?
Well, Nebraska fired their OC, and our good buddy Dana Holgerson is calling plays for them now.
Oh, wow.
That might not be a bad thing.
So that guy owes me a lot of money over the years.
When he's a head coach, it's been a disaster. When he's an offensive play caller, I at least have some hope. And I mean, Satterfield was their OC previously. He's an absolute moron. Dylan Raiola has had one of the worst runouts I've seen since conference play started. He has 1 touchdown since week 5. In the last 4 games, he has 1 touchdown, 6 interceptions. Now, he has run poorly. He only has 4 turnover-worthy plays. So some of this is on the Nebraska receivers. Can we please not volleyball set passes to defenders for interceptions, please? The O-line has actually been better than I thought they would be, considering they just have a million injuries from the preseason. They lost 3 guys that were projected to start for them. On defense, Malcolm Hartzog and Bly Hill have been out. Hill hasn't played really all year. He doesn't matter. But Hartzog, it's kind of just been like they've had one piece out of their secondary for most of the season. Tommy Hill was out for a long time. Forget the last name on him. Anyway, he's been out for a long time. He came back. Hartzog immediately misses. I'm just not confident in USC at all. They're off the bye. They've had a ton of defensive injuries, and they're making a QB change. They go to Jaden Maeva, former UNLV starter. His underlying metrics are alarming. He played in the Mountain West last year, 64% completion, 8.7 yards per attempt, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. All that seems great. 18 big-time throws, 24 turnover-worthy plays. This guy is a complete gunslinger. I mean, he's so live to play you right out of a game as much as he's live to play you into the game. Their O-line is horrible. Their receivers have been underwhelming. Their defense stinks. I don't know. I'm interested in Nebraska as a buy low here. They're going across the country, which I don't like, but maybe this is a stay away. Nebraska is already taking money. If you want to take this, I think it's a side you have to get now.
Yeah, it's going down. There's still some 9s out there. There's a 9.5 out there, a rogue 9.5 somewhere. Yeah, I'm not betting USC. We're in line here. We've talked about a lot of favorites. This would be a dog or pass for me.
I agree.
Woo. West Virginia. Why not? Why not talk about them? I was stunned. I was looking at, make the playoff odds on DraftKings yesterday, and they had a bunch of teams listed, and they had West Virginia listed. Obviously, it was huge dog to make it, but the fact that they could make it is insane given their season. I'll tell you what, they obviously have to win this game, but they're back in Morgantown. I think they might win this game.
They have to win, I think, all 3 of their remaining games, and there's still probably a dog, which we went through all the Big 12 scenarios. Most of these teams still play each other, so there are going to be teams that get knocked off. They're only 2 losses in conference, believe it or not. So they are a team that is still alive, which is crazy. Garrett Green, I don't think is going to play in this game. I don't know if it matters. We saw Nico Marchiol play just fine. You sacrifice some production on the ground. He is at 3 yards per carry. Garrett Green was at 6.2, but they're not going to change the offense. And honestly, it's a small sample. That could very well rise. Marchiol is a dual threat. And the turnover-worthy plays are fine with him. He only has 3. Maybe it's a little bit elevated because it's a small sample, but that's not all that different than Green. Green is an absurd amount of turnover-worthy plays this year. Baylor is really tricky to evaluate. They have gone to Sawyer Robertson at quarterback. I think he's run kind of hot. He has 4 interceptions, 10 turnover-worthy plays, 5.4 yards per carry. This has never been a guy that's been able to run. So seeing him just take off and get these long touchdowns. He had one against Colorado. I'm just so confused seeing this out of him. But overall, you need to be able to pass on West Virginia. It's their pass defense that's absolutely atrocious. And I think he can do that for the most part. He's still relatively efficient. Their O-line is pretty good, 53rd in pass blocking, 72nd in run blocking. I just don't think Baylor's defense is any good either. And I think whether it's Marchiol or Garrett Green, you still probably have success. Overall, Baylor's defense comes in worse just in overall efficiency than West Virginia's, which is crazy because West Virginia is 129th in coverage. But overall, Baylor 117th, West Virginia 114th. You dive into some of the quarterbacks they faced recently. It's not pretty. This is Baylor's defense we're talking about. 9.8 yards per attempt to Josh Hoover, 7.1 yards per carry to Savion Williams, 8.5 yards per attempt to Alan Bowman, Taj Brooks, 5 yards per carry. It only gets worse. I mean, this is another potential greasy shootout, I guess. The total's pretty high in the game. But I am somewhat interested in West Virginia. This is not an easy road trip to ever take in this conference.
It's really not. And I know West Virginia's just been a pain point no matter what we do, but I kind of like West Virginia in the spot. You can find 3. And you mentioned I would sacrifice a little rushing upside for a little less turnover equity. And I think Nico gives you that at this point.
Dude, that's all it's been in the Big 12 this year. Avoid your turnovers.
Yeah, and you win.
These teams are so even matched. The ones that are, I think, actually the better teams in this conference, just the victims of bad turnovers and stuff. Garrett Green and Jalen Daniels being 2 of those signal callers this year has been a huge mess. And my 3 favorite teams, I think, aside from Iowa State, who we had a future on, were West Virginia, Kansas, and UCF. All 3 of those teams have just been, so turnover prone.
It's been miserable. It's just been miserable. I've seen it all year. I look at Utah. The Retzlaff tried to fumble 8 times, and he just only could recover his own fumbles. And then Utah made, I think they had, at least a couple. And that's the difference in the game. Over and over. All right. One last, because speak of Utah, why not? Let's round it out with this. And then we will get to the best bets, and we'll talk about some other things. I type in Rose because that's their quarterback. Utah. Now you got to get out of there. Probably hungover from just that's as bad of a loss as you're going to take in a rivalry game. I truly cannot believe they lost the game. Now you got to go into Boulder with Colorado just doing their thing. First of all, do you expect it to be Rose again for Utah? And what do you like in this game?
I think it'll be Rose. I don't know if it should be. Basically, Rose. I don't think there's really any future with him. Isaac Wilson was one of their highest recruits this incoming cycle. 4-star quarterback, thrown to the Wolves in basically an untenable situation. What are we just moving on from Wilson now? I'm kind of just confused at what they're trying to do. But yeah, Colorado's been playing awesome. Their defense is a lot better than people thought. I don't know if Jimmy Horn's going to play in this game. He slipped on the tortilla and got hurt. But it doesn't really matter. They're so deep at wide receiver. It only matters for me and you when we bet his props. That's still right. Have Travis Hunter, LeJontay Wester. I mean, they're getting good play out of even like Draylon Miller. Defense is strong. Only real weakness is up front. Deion Hayes has been out. Shane Cokes got hurt in one of their more recent games. But even then, they're not allowing that much rushing production. They did a great job against Taj Brooks, 4.4 yards per carry, stifled Arizona. Corey Kiner was at 5.5 yards per carry. That was their worst mark recently. The only concern I really have with the Colorado side, Utah got back a ton of defenders. So they've been super, super hurt on defense all season long. But the only guys they're still really missing are Levani Demooney and Keenan Johnson. Sion Fotu, one of their linebackers, did return and play just one snap. But this team got back, I mean, over the last 2 weeks now, they've gotten back O'Toole on the edge, Tafuna, Vimahi, that's all just up front. Karen Reed's back from injury. So I think they're kind of sneaky on the defensive side of the ball now. I don't know if it's going to be enough against Colorado, especially with still having some weaknesses in your secondary, like your number one corner. And overall, it's not a strength for this team. I don't know that they really have a strength on defense. It's just kind of nice that you're not playing a bunch of completely dusty guys. But the total is lower than I thought it was going to be. This was like something I'd highlighted earlier in the week, and then 46.5. That's alarming. It might just be a pass. I don't know if I want to take a Colorado position because Utah, I think, will be improved. I definitely don't want to bet Brandon Rose, though. So I don't know. I thought there was going to be more to this game than there actually ended up being with some of the injury stuff with Utah.
Colorado would pass. I would be willing to pass and just wait and hope somehow a 9.5 pops up. I'm not looking to take this right now. And you mentioned Utah. I just don't know what to make of them.
I think that's part of the reason why they were much better last week is that they had a ton of dudes back on defense.
They played. I cannot believe they lost that game. I just cannot believe they lost.
Sorry.
It's just, I mean, listen, it was, it never should have even got there. I thought that was an absolutely horrendous call. But it never should have even got there. You got to score. They didn't score in the second half. Utah did not score a single point in the second half.
They're live to do that any week. Their offense stinks.
It was insane. And they gave up a kickoff return for a touchdown. They had multiple turnovers. It was just an insane run out.
Well, I mean, I'll probably buried the lead here a little bit. Maybe we just look at like some under team totals for this team. They lost Money Parks. They're on a third string quarterback. Brant Keithy is out for the season. Their star tight end. I only focus on the defensive injuries. And for every guy that's like coming back in on defense, they're losing someone on offense. The right guard missed their last game. This offense is live to score 0 points any game the rest of the year.
Yeah, that doesn't seem good. Colorado, man, like I said, they're doing it. They are doing it. Credit to Deion. It'll be a fun team. I hope they get in, honestly. I'd like to see it.
Me too. I do want to see them get in. Everything's in front of them. They could easily get in.
They absolutely could get in. And I would be fascinated to see last thing, and then we'll get to best bets. They get through. BYU gets through. Neutral field. What do you think that line is?
-2 Colorado.
I think Colorado's favorite. So do I.
I agree.
So, yep.
Who are Colorado's losses? I forget.
Nebraska, which is insane.
That was when everyone thought Colorado sucked too.
And Kansas State.
The Kansas State one was the game where Travis Hunter got hurt.
Did they lose? They lost to Kansas State though, right?
Yeah, they did. It was very close. They were dead even yards per play. Dead even. They had the same yardage totals on a per play basis.
Now, I will say, to speak to the other side of it, Colorado hasn't played anyone worth a damn in my book because this whole conference could be deleted. And their non-con wasn't easy. It wasn't a cupcake, but it wasn't anyone.
You think their schedule's that easy? Baylor's been better than we thought. UCF is a good team in my opinion.
So they they're on the Notre Dame diet, which is like you play like the 43rd best team in the country 10 straight weeks. And it's
That's true. They have done that.
Like they play everyone as a solid test, and there's something to be said about that. But like, who is the best team they've played?
Oh, I mean, if this team gets in the playoff, they're stone dead. But
Like I just
they would at least be fun in the playoff because they can move the
super
ball.
fun.
Like I don't want to see BYU in the playoff. I'm
I want to see
sorry.
Tennessee's front against them.
Do you want to see a dead body?
I want to see them against a team like yeah. Honestly, who's the best team they play? Kansas State.
Probably. Their remaining schedule is Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State.
Kansas is going to beat them.
I wouldn't be surprised. Dude, there's like this log jam. You know this. Like this log jam in the Big 12. So Utah is obviously some of its injury. But like Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State, UCF, West Virginia, Colorado, maybe Baylor on their best day. I don't think that much separates any of those teams.
No. It doesn't work like this. This is why you play the games. But I think Kansas right now you could make an argument, is just as good as anyone in the entire conference.
Dude, I don't even think like Arizona State, Texas Tech on a good day, TCU on a good day are that much worse.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Like Houston just beat Kansas State. Big 12 is crazy, man. This is
top to bottom. It's got the smallest range. I think it's
the least talent, but maybe the least bad teams too.
Yeah, there's no Mississippi States. Who's the worst of the Big Four?
The worst team.
Yeah, Florida State.
Purdue.
Oh, Purdue. Never mind. Purdue is the answer. Purdue is the worst team I've ever seen, possibly.
Purdue versus Florida State on a neutral.
No, what's
the line?
They play that in Chernobyl. What's the line? Florida State's got to be favorite.
Yeah, you have to think so.
Purdue is really bad. I forgot about them. Does Purdue have any wins?
Yeah, they have one win.
But it was like Indiana State or Missouri State. It was someone not real. It was the first game of the year, and then they had a bye.
Yep, and then they lost to Oregon State on the play where Hudson Card threw the ball to Reggie Love, and he dropped it and then kicked it for a pick six.
Indiana State, they won 49-0, and then they haven't won since. So they have 0 FBS wins.
But they did take Illinois to overtime.
And Northwestern. Good job, good effort. They've scored 0 points. Well, yeah. It doesn't matter. They're the worst. Anyway, here we go. Best bets. Interesting games. What are we looking at for the first round of bets this week?
I am actually a little more interested in Arizona State as we've gone through the show and talked about it. I think they're my number one right now. And then there's like a slew of games that I'm waiting on. Kansas is one that I don't think you need to take right now, but I certainly like them over BYU. It's in Provo, so there's really no incentive to take this right now. But that's one I have a lot of interest in. I'll go with those two.
Listen, I'm on board with both of them. I'm going to go to a total. Talked about a couple. I'm going to go to the total in the Iowa State game. I like that spot. I just think you mentioned efficiency. There's going to be crazy chunk plays, even if tempo isn't good. And now I got to find one more because no chance we remain with just 3 Big 12 bets. That's a disaster. we cannot have that.
Yeah, that is a complete mess. There are a bunch I'm waiting on. Like I would like to take Clemson over Pitt, but I hopefully can find that in single digits. And then there's a bunch that are injury related, like Florida's injury related.
That's the one I'm going to. So hear me, people.
Missouri.
Florida and Missouri. Keep an eye, but Florida in particular, I know we're waiting on a lot of names, but for priority number one is that they have a quarterback in Lagway. We need him back. That's prerequisite. Then we'll see about the rest. But this is not bad. Again, we got a lot more coming down the pipeline for week 12, not just here, but in Discord. If you want access to these lines, these props, Maction, all that stuff, again, come on Inside the Ropes. The link is below. Click that link join link because not only are you going to get a month free, you're also getting all the bonuses that you claim. So you click that. It's the best of both worlds. Cannot wait to see these games. Fun show. Greasy, but fun. Friends, we'll be back in just a couple days. Hit us with requests in the comments if you want to talk about UMass and Liberty. Some of these other made-up games. Louisiana, Monroe, and Auburn this week. Let's get it done. On that note, friends, good luck. Talk to you soon.